Welcome back to the show. Former SEIU President Andy Stern applauds China's, quote, superior economic model in today's Wall Street Journal. He claims the free market economic model is being thrown on the trash heap of history. But do the freedom fighters agree? Back with me, Fox Business anchor Charles Payne, Executive Director for the Independent Women's Forum, Nicole Neily, and Newsday columnist Ellis Hennigan. They join me now. Charles, you know, we've heard this since the turn of the 20th century, that the capitalist system is on the trash heap of history. What's new here?
It's so funny. The T's going out. You said, what does this mean for President Obama's second term? I think they're trying to lay him up for indefinite terms. You know, and here's the thing. If President Bush was in office, would we hear this kind of nonsense? But I do think, if you think about it, these unions are sort of set up like a communist nation, right? Andy Stern gives out the marching orders. Yeah. You ever go to one of these protests? These union guys are there. They drive by and they hand them the signs.
Nicole, let's get, you know, Charles making an important point here. But Nicole, I want to get to the data about China being a paper tiger. It is worse than Portugal with its debt situation. It's insolvent, according to credit rating officials I've spoken with. It's got rotten bank loans shoved away in off-balance sheet state-owned enterprises, and Moody's is saying it's understating its bank debt in the banking system and in the government system. What do you make of that information?
You know, as Charles said before, I'm really not surprised that an SEIU goon is basically like he really likes a coercive government regime. I think the SEIU's bank sheets are basically like China's. You know, there's so much that we don't see. There's so much we don't know. We don't know how a lot of the money is being spent. So I'm absolutely not surprised, that I'm horrified that we would want to try and emulate that model here. He talks about in his article his 5-year plan, that he thinks that's great. I mean, what has the government investing in for our 5-year plans here? Solyndra, thanks.
All right, so interesting point. You know, the joke on Wall Street, Ellis, is that China's like the People's Republic of Enron. The China syndrome is it's got rotten bank loans and rotten debt in the system that's about 40% of its GDP. Can you ignore that? Has Andy Stern at SEIU ignored that, and touting China as an economic miracle?
Nobody wants to ignore it. First of all, I'm sorry that neither Nicole nor Charles believes in American workers' right to join unions and bargain collectively, as the law has permitted now for many, many decades.
And
have to call their leaders goons. But here's the reality. Listen, we don't want to live in a system like China. We didn't grow up that way. We didn't have 50 years of that kind of central control. On the other hand, we also shouldn't ignore the fact that they control a huge part of our debt. Their economy is growing at rates that we can only imagine in our wildest of dreams. I'm not saying we want to copy it, but let's don't act like it doesn't matter. They've had some successes.
All right, but Charles, final word to you. You know, including political prisoners in China that are being tortured. Also, a mile-wide pollution above China and dreadful health problems that we are just coming to realize about. And, you know, the worker system, they're just getting brutalized over there. Do we want that model? Why doesn't Andy Stern to acknowledge how workers are being brutalized in China?
Or the fact that you can't unionize in China, right? Could you imagine we're going to unionize in China? Andy Stern would not exist over there.
Well, maybe that was the intent of the article.
They've done, well, no, he said he likes it. They've done a few things right, but I think that they're in such a rush to catch up with America and the rest of the industrialized world. To your point, they're doing it at the expense of a lot of negative things. But in some ways, they've been more capitalistic than we are. I think what Andy Stern likes is the railroad stuff they've worked on, the dam stuff they worked on. And you know what? Their railroads are losing a lot of money, just like the railroads in Spain, all those high-speed roads. I mean, it's all very attractive stuff.
All right, we got to leave it there. The Federal Housing Authority is in trouble yet again, and Fox Business called it 2 years ago. Earlier today, the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development testified on Capitol Hill that, quote, significant further declines in home prices could create a situation in which the FHA's current portfolio would require additional support. That means it could be another billion-dollar bailout to the tune of $50 billion. That's according to one congressional study. Ellis, would taxpayers back another bailout?
Well, I wouldn't want to. We'd rather we have no bailouts. But listen, I mean, if there is a significant decline in housing values in America, these guys are going to have trouble. But frankly, so is every bank in America. Let's just pray that doesn't happen.
Yeah, we're busy fireproofing the banks. But also, Charles, here's the issue. The FHA leveraged up worse than Bear Stearns, right, when you look at its balance sheet. And the cushion here the capital reserve is the U.S. taxpayer. What do you make of that?
What we're suggesting that if there's a significant, first of all, someone who's watching this show and their house went from $400,000 to $200,000, and then if it goes from $200,000 to $150,000, no way in the world they're going to support a bailout for any of these government entities that have done nothing but make the problem worse. I mean, I think people are tired of the bailouts. They're tired of the secret bailouts, the official bailouts, the trillions of dollars that have been poured into these banks that are still on the precipice of falling completely apart.
All right.
The average American doesn't want to see it anymore.
Nicole, it seems to me that we're going to be living with problems at the FHA for some time to come. How do we remedy the situation at the places like the FHA, Fannie Mae, and Freddie Mac? I mean, the FHA's balance sheet alone is half the size of France. When you load in Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, it's like Russia and France combined. Go ahead.
No, I mean, this is a government solution, theoretically, another bailout to a government-created problem. If they didn't have to guarantee all these shoddy loans that Fannie and Freddie had offered in the first place, you know, we wouldn't be in this giant mess. But I don't think that the American people will tolerate it again. I mean, let's think about when all the mortgage crisis stuff hit a couple years ago. That's what sparked Rick Santelli's rant. That's what sparked the Tea Party. I mean, people just don't want to pay for their mortgage for their neighbors' irresponsible decisions at this
Ellis,
point. So I think
is it time for the American people to finally get a straight answer out of Washington that we're going to be in the weeds here for some time to come? Yes, we created the mess. We tried to fix income inequality via housing policy, which is a dangerous way to go. What do you make of that?
Well, listen, I mean, you can't blame every single economic problem we're having on Fannie and Freddie, but listen, housing prices have declined precipitously.
No, just talking about housing.
There's a huge bubble that we're still absorbing, and it's going to be real painful. And so what do you want to do? You want to let all the banks collapse? You want to let those agencies?
Not saying. I'm just saying. Wait, hang on. I'm just saying. Play it straight with the American people.
Fair enough. Listen, folks. Tough times are still coming. Don't feel like you're out of the woods yet. There.
All right. There goes Ellis Hennigan playing it straight with the American people.
That's your platform.
That's his platform. Are you running in 2012?
No way. No way.
All right.
Only if you're endorsing me.
Well, yeah, I can see the two of you on a ticket. Not. Anyway, next up, they serve our country by putting their lives on the line to protect our freedoms. But does that mean the military should get speedier, less invasive treatment at the airport? The freedom fighters ask, what happened to all men were created equal? That's next. Don't go away.